Have you ever noticed how the same game can mean everything to one person and absolutely nothing to another? Millions are shouting at their screens, faces painted, hearts racing, devastated because 11 athletes they've never met didn't score enough points. And then there are those who feel nothing. Not boredom, not superiority, just indifference. Stay with me, because what I'm about to explain may completely reshape how you see the sports-obsessed people in your life, and maybe even yourself. Here's the part no one says out loud. Not caring about sports doesn't mean you're dull. It doesn't mean you lack intensity, and it certainly doesn't mean something is broken inside you. But there is something happening in your brain, something measurably different from the roughly 60% of Americans who follow sports with near religious devotion. And the difference runs deeper than preference. Let's begin with the simplest question. Why do so many people care so deeply? Humans evolved as tribal beings. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging. Your group shielded you from danger, hunted with you, fed you, kept you alive. Modern sports teams? They're ancient tribes, just wearing branded jerseys instead of animal skins. When someone watches their team compete, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. The same chemical involved in attachment to family. Yes, really. The brain blurs the line. It subtly convinces you that millionaire athletes are part of your inner circle. But here's where it shifts. People who don't obsess over sports often show what psychologists describe as lower tribal drive. Their identity isn't anchored as tightly to collective belonging. They tend to lean individualistic. They're more likely to think, I don't need a group victory to feel whole. And there's data behind this. A 2019 study revealed that individuals with low interest in sports displayed significantly less us versus them thinking. Translation? They don't automatically resent the opposing team just because it's not theirs. But this is only the first layer, because what happens inside the brain of a die-hard fan during a game is far more intense than most realize. Think about the feeling just before opening a gift, that tight anticipation, that surge, dopamine. Sports fans experience that spike repeatedly during a game. Every possession, every near miss, every unexpected play, tiny bursts of anticipation and reward, over and over. It's not casual enjoyment, it's a neurochemical loop. fMRI research shows that watching your team activates reward circuits similar to those triggered by gambling and other highly compelling behaviors. And here's the twist. It's not the victory alone that hooks the brain. It's uncertainty, the not knowing. Unpredictability keeps dopamine cycling. In psychology, this pattern is called intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward schedule known. The same mechanism that makes slot machines so powerful. Let that sink in. Your brain doesn't categorize dopamine by source. It doesn't ask whether the stimulus is important. It simply wants more. So what about people who don't care about sports? Their dopamine systems just aren't activated by secondhand competition. The game doesn't light up their reward circuitry in the same way. And here's something even more surprising. Part of this may be genetic. Research from the University of Chicago suggests that variations in dopamine receptor genes can influence how strongly someone responds to competitive spectator events. Which means your complete indifference to whether the Lakers win or lose might literally be coded into your DNA. But we're not done yet. There's another psychological layer called berging, basking in reflected glory. When a team wins, fans say, "We won." When the team loses, suddenly it becomes, "they lost." Notice the shift in pronouns. It's subtle, but powerful. People who don't invest emotionally in sports are less likely to engage in this distancing. Their sense of self remains more internally anchored. They don't rely on external victories to feel competent or worthy. Their self-esteem tends to be steadier, less volatile, less dependent on outcomes beyond their control. Now, before this turns into a battlefield in the comments, I'm not arguing that one approach is superior. But the psychological differences are real, and understanding them changes how we interpret behavior. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. Sports fans often score higher on certain measures of empathy. They practice emotionally investing in the struggles and triumphs of people they've never met. So why don't non-fans extend that same emotional intensity to athletes? It's not a lack of empathy, it's allocation. Emotional energy is finite. We all distribute it somewhere. People uninterested in sports often channel that emotional investment toward different arenas: social causes, close relationships, creative expression, intellectual exploration. A 2021 study found that individuals with low sports engagement scored significantly higher in openness to experience and appreciation of art and beauty. They seek awe in symphonies instead of stadiums, meaning in ideas rather than scoreboards, transcendence through art, nature, philosophy. Their brains are chasing the same things: reward, connection, significance. They're simply finding them in different places. And that difference isn't a flaw. It's wiring. And let's acknowledge something uncomfortable. For some people, indifference toward sports isn't neutral. It's protective. Maybe gym class was humiliation, not camaraderie. Maybe sports culture felt like a closed circle, and you were outside it. Maybe the loud, chest-pounding competitiveness never felt inspiring, only exhausting. Or maybe you simply never understood why grown adults yell at a screen because a ball crossed a line. Your lack of interest might carry history, or it might just be preference. Both are legitimate. Now here's the part that explains the quiet tension between fans and non-fans. They don't just enjoy different activities, they extract meaning in different ways. Sports enthusiasts experience meaning through narrative arcs: the underdog who rises, the dramatic comeback, the dynasty that dominates, the rivalry that stretches across decades. It's unscripted drama with real consequences. That unpredictability makes it powerful. But for those unmoved by sports, that same randomness can feel hollow. They wonder, why emotionally invest in an outcome I can't influence, performed by people I don't know, inside a system that doesn't change my actual life? It's a fair question. And yet, so is the opposite perspective. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about two distinct pathways to fulfilling the same human hunger for story and significance. One group finds epic meaning in a championship run. The other finds it in a novel's final chapter, in a relationship that deepens over time, in building something original, in solving a complex problem. Same need, different arena. Researchers describe this contrast as parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans often form one-sided emotional bonds with teams and players. Non-fans tend to prefer investing where reciprocity exists, where their effort shifts the outcome, where they are participants, not observers. Neither strategy is superior. They're simply different methods of navigating existence. But here's where it becomes more nuanced. The psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who spent decades studying optimal experience, discovered that flow, those moments of total absorption, can arise in almost any activity. For some, it's a fourth-quarter play. For others, it's writing, coding, painting, designing, thinking. The mechanism is universal. The trigger is personal. And here's something quietly revealing. People who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more anchored in their own timeline. They're not spending 3 hours each weekend riding the emotional roller coaster of someone else's challenge. They're immersed in their own. There's something subtly radical about directing attention inward instead of outward. Not better, just different. So what does all of this really mean? If you don't care about sports, you're not missing a fundamental piece of humanity. You're not defective. Your brain's reward circuitry is tuned differently. Your tribal wiring expresses itself in another domain. Your empathy flows toward different targets. That's calibration, not deficiency. The next time someone asks, "Did you watch the game?" and you honestly couldn't care less, remember this. You're not broken. You're not boring. You're simply playing a different game. And perhaps one with stakes that feel more personal to you. If this resonated, there's something else you'll want to explore. Because people who prefer observation over spectacle, who think before they react, who don't instinctively follow the crowd, often process information in ways that are fundamentally different. And that difference might be your greatest leverage. Click one of these videos. You may discover that the way you see the world isn't an accident.